pastors from the North American Division transfer from one church to another. What effect does this have on the congregation, the family? How does a pastor know that this is the right invitation for them? I recently spoke with Charles Tapp and his family about their recent transfer from Sligo to Seabrook Church. What was it like for you to make this kind of move from one church to another?
Well, I'm used to making moves throughout 23 years of ministry. Most of my life has been just that. I haven't had your traditional ministry. On an average, a pastor may spend 5-6 years in a church. The longest I've ever spent anywhere is 5 years. Most of my ministry has been 2 to 3 years in and out. Making this move from Sligo Church to Seabrook was probably the most difficult one as it relates to making the decision to accept this call.
What are the spiritual responsibilities for a pastor coming from one congregation to another?
I'm glad you said it that way, because a lot of times people may think, well, when you leave a congregation, that's it, and you just close the door and you go on to this new challenge. Someone once described this kind of move that we do as pastors. They use two metaphors, death and divorce, because it is, in a sense, death. There's an end, there's a closing, there's a finality to one aspect of it. But it's also like a divorce because you've made relationships, you have ties there at that church, because it's not just a job for us, it's a calling. And you have friends, and you've gone through experiences, and you've had growth with these individuals. So it's hard to just, say goodbye and walk away. So you have to do it in such a way that you let the congregation know you're not leaving them as much as you are going to the next place that God is calling you to.
In order for His will to be accomplished, sometimes God will ask us to do some things we have never done before in a way which we have never attempted to do it. Which means sometimes you got to be willing to come out of your comfort zone.
What was the process in making this decision?
Basically, it came as an invitation to me, first of all, from the Seabrook Church. They extended the call for me to come here, and basically it was up to me at that point to decide whether this was something that I wanted to do. A lot of times when a minister is moved, it's done through the process of the conference committee voting that individual to move to a certain place, certain district. But this came from the congregation itself, its church board, church and business session, asking me would I consider being part of the pastoral staff here at Seabrook.
Show thy reconciling face, take away our sins.
I had just gotten to know the folk at Sligo. We'd been there about 2.5 years, and I found that I really fell in love with the folk there at Sligo, particularly the children in the junior Sabbath school class. I became very attached to them. Moving from Sligo to Seabrook, I wasn't sure what I was going to expect. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, to be honest with you, because initially, when we heard about the move, we had visited the church before. It was a church that we had been familiar with. We were familiar with because we'd been there before. And when we walked in, it was a different church. A lot of the old folk had moved on, and I was a little reluctant. I missed the folk at Sligo, but I've become involved with Sabbath school again there, and as long as I'm, providing a service and using the gifts that God has given me, well, it's helping to make it a little bit easier for me.
We've been to that church before, and my dad pastored there, so it was kind of the same but different, since other new people were there. We had to meet them, and the old people were still there, so it was kind of okay.
I was kind of hesitant. I didn't really want to go to Seabrook, go to the church, because I'd just gotten involved, and I was really kind of against it in a way. But as I started getting involved in starting our youth Sabbath school at Seabrook, because they didn't really have one, and like just talking to the other people who I didn't know went to the church but I went to school with has really made it a little easier for me to change the church.
What advice would you have for other pastors about to make a change to another church?
Several things. Number one, come to grips within your own heart if that's God's will for your life. Don't be so eager to listen to the voices of others, because they may look at it in a completely different way. They may see it as being a good move because it's a promotion, it's a larger congregation, more prestige. But you've got to go to your bush. And I keep going back to that metaphor, like Moses went to his bush where he could hear the voice of God speaking to him and directing his life. Secondly, don't forget your family in making this decision, especially if you have children, and especially if you have young children who are in grade schools, academies, things of that nature, because it's going to impact them tremendously. Thirdly, I would say consider your former congregation in making this move. You've got to ask yourself several questions, one of which, has my mission been accomplished here? And you've got to come to grips with, is this part of God's will? Have I finished, have I completed the mission that He has given me at this church before I ever even look at moving or going to another assignment?